These are the 5 trends dominating book publishing in 2026 that every writer needs to know, because if you don't, you're threatening your book's success. I analyzed 40 book deals for debut authors that were announced over the last month to determine how the book market is shifting. And I was genuinely surprised by what I found, even though I've been in this business for a decade. I'll share the 5 biggest book trends that we're seeing in 2026, and at the end, I'll answer the burning question: is traditional publishing even worth pursuing as a debut author today? This first trend showed up in nearly all of the book deals I analyzed, and it's completely reshaping what gets published. Genre blending. Publishers are obsessed with genre mashups right now. The data proves it. 75% of the book deals that were announced since January 1st for debut authors involve stories that blend 2 or more genres. And here's what's especially fascinating. Romance is almost always in the equation. We're seeing romance mixed with horror, romance with historical fiction, romance with suspense, and even romance with supernatural thriller elements. This trend suggests that publishers aren't as interested in straightforward stories that check all the typical genre boxes. They want stories that give readers multiple experiences in one book, and they want to see unexpected concepts thrown together. For instance, one book was pitched as Gilmore Girls meets Scream. Another was described as a nerdy friends to lovers rom-com that involves a high-stakes heist. There was also a book described as My Roommate is a Vampire meets Netflix's Wednesday set on a college campus. These books aren't just being pitched as romance with a touch of mystery. They're fully integrated genre blends where both elements are equally important to the story. Why do publishers want these genre hybrids so much? Genre blending solves a key problem in today's extremely crowded and saturated market: differentiation. When you put 2 unexpected genres or comp titles together, you immediately pique interest and demonstrate what sets your story apart. Plus, it means that the book will automatically appeal to multiple reader bases. Why do you think romantasy has blown up so much in the past few years? It scratches the fantasy itch, the romance itch, and has become its own booming genre entirely. So if your book doesn't fit neatly into one genre box, don't try to force it. Instead, lean into the mashup. Figure out your X meets Y pitch and use it to your advantage. This next trend is the secret ingredient publishers are using to get readers addicted to their books. And you should too. Suspense engines. I was stunned to see that nearly 40% of the book deals reported for debut authors this year across all genres included some mystery, thriller, or suspense elements, even if they weren't primarily pitched as one of those genres. There was a speculative historical thriller in the vein of Sherlock Holmes, a dark academia thriller, a darkly humorous murder mystery, even a horror novel where PTA moms start mysteriously vanishing. Publishers have figured out that suspense is one of the most reliable ways to achieve that page-turning quality that keeps readers up until 3 a.m. to finish the book. That's exactly why suspense-driven movies like The Housemaid and TV shows like All Her Fault are so popular. And yes, both were based on books. So how can you add a suspense engine to your story? The key is to plant unanswered questions that readers desperately want answered. This could be a missing person, a mystery from the past that's impacting the present, or even just a looming threat that's slowly closing in on your characters. One deal I saw followed a woman who was searching for the son she gave up for adoption. And even though that book wasn't primarily labeled a mystery or a thriller, that is the suspense engine that fuels the story. The suspense in your story doesn't have to be life or death stakes. It just has to make readers ask, what happens next? What's the truth? How is this going to resolve? This next trend might make you reconsider where your story takes place. Transportive settings. 1 in 4 of the debut book deals announced this year so far involved non-US settings, with European settings being especially popular. And nearly 1 in 5 were set in historical periods. It seems that publishers are betting that readers want to be transported to some place dramatically different from their present lives. We're seeing books set in 1949 Paris, 16th century England, 1990s Nigeria, a boarding school in the Berkshires in 1969. But here's what makes these settings so powerful. They're not just window dressings. They're integral to the plot. Take the book set in 1949 Paris, which follows a journalist's wife who finds a body at her culinary school. The post-war Paris setting allows her to explore the complicated truth about Franco-American relations at the time. In the book set in 1990s Nigeria, a young girl navigates the complicated dynamics between her mother and her father's mistress. The turbulent political backdrop of that specific time and place is essential to the story's themes of independence and agency. If you're setting your story in a different time or place, make sure that it's for a reason beyond it seems cool. Ask yourself, how does my setting inform my characters' choices and identities? What conflicts are unique to this particular time and place? What can I explore here that I can't in a contemporary American setting? If you're not familiar with your setting personally, make sure to thoroughly research it so it comes across as fully developed and authentic. Now, this next trend signals a shift in whose stories are being told. Broader representation. We're seeing an exciting expansion in the types of characters who are put front and center in fiction. As I looked at this year's debut book deals, two patterns emerged when it came to representation. The first, older female protagonists. These aren't wise grandmothers in the background, but main characters living full and complex lives. One book follows a fiery septuagenarian widow who has a dating app romance. Another features a 71-year-old widow who impulsively buys a camper van and goes on a road trip to find her long-lost first love. These stories aren't about aging entirely. They're stories where the protagonists just happen to be older, but are pursuing adventures that are just as exciting as those of 20-somethings. This matters because it expands the pool of readers who can see themselves in the books they see on the shelf. And commercially, publishers are recognizing that older female readers have significant buying power and are hungry for stories that reflect their experiences. The other major representation trend is stories that center queer characters rather than leave them on the periphery. There was a contemporary gay rom-com set in Beijing, a queer Edwardian romance about a bisexual jewel thief, a historical mystery with a sapphic subplot set in 16th century England, and a literary novel exploring queer desire in a Black Pentecostal church. What I love about these stories is that they don't seem to be focusing primarily on the queer character's trauma or struggles with identity. Many of them are genre novels, romances, or mysteries where the characters just happen to be queer. If you're writing older or queer characters, don't be afraid to let them exist in genre fiction. Let them have adventures beyond their identities. Now, this next trend was the most interesting to me because it tells us what themes are resonating right now. The dark side of domestic life. Publishers are leaning hard into stories that explore the horror and dysfunction in our home and family lives. Two specific themes rose to the surface. The first, motherhood as horror. In my analysis, I noticed two book deals being pitched as for fans of Night Bitch, which is a novel and now a film starring Amy Adams, where a mother believes that she's turning into a dog. These stories don't romanticize or glorify the experience of modern motherhood, but rather examine mothers' quiet rage, sacrifice, and psychological unraveling. They're shining a light on the ugly, difficult, but undeniable parts of one of life's most profound experiences. Now let's talk about the second theme, marriages being pushed to their breaking point. One of the book deals from this year features a woman trying to have a smooth divorce, but then facing brutal legal battles and accusations of adultery. Another is about a marriage of convenience between a cafe owner and a hotel executive. There's even a novel about a newly engaged couple whose relationship unravels when they house sit in a remote location. All of these books examine the gap between the idealized version of domestic life we're sold, a happy marriage, a perfect family, suburban bliss, and the messy, sometimes horrifying reality. So if you're writing about family, marriage, or parenthood, don't be afraid to show the dark sides. The market is clearly ready for stories that expose the uncomfortable truths that we all see and experience, but keep quiet. Now, I know what you might be thinking. These trends are great and all, but it's simply impossible to get a book deal as a debut author. Publishers only want books from established bestsellers or celebrities. So why does any of this even matter? Here's what honestly shocked me the most out of all the analysis I did. The data proves that publishers are actively investing, sometimes competitively, in debut voices. Of all the debut book deals that were reported so far this year, 40% were sold in preempts and 25% went to auction. Let me explain explain what these industry terms mean and why they matter. A preempt is when a publisher makes an offer so strong that the agent and author accept it before shopping the book to other publishers. And an auction means that multiple publishers were bidding against one another to try to acquire the book. So many of these books being sold in preempts and at auctions means that there is a ton of demand for strong debut fiction. Publishers aren't just casually buying these books, they're paying more so that no other publisher has the chance to scoop it up. And in some cases, publishers are fighting over these books. Here's another encouraging stat. 1/3 of these book deals were for 2 or 3 books, meaning that publishers are investing in debut authors as franchises. They're betting on these authors' long-term potential, not just acquiring a single book. So if you're a debut author who dreams of getting traditionally published this year, it absolutely still is a viable path. But know that it does remain highly, highly competitive. I've anecdotally seen agents report that they've received more queries than ever this year. So do your best to position your book strategically so it stands out. And most importantly, make sure that you're crafting the absolute best version of your story possible. Your story concept is super important, but it ultimately doesn't matter if the writing falls flat. If your book aligns with any of these trends I identified, I hope you use it to your advantage this year. But if it doesn't, don't panic. Trends shift, and there will always be room for exceptionally told stories, regardless of whether they fit the current market. Now that you know where publishing is heading this year, you need to craft a stellar query letter that catches attention. So watch this video where I reveal my foolproof query letter formula that landed agent offers and book deals. Thanks so much for watching, and happy writing.